Welcome back to Strong, Confident, and Informed, the podcast where we go beyond surface level fitness advice and actually help you understand what's driving your results. I'm Danielle Lemoyne, an online fitness coach who helps women build strength, lose fat, and most importantly, stay consistent without constantly starting over. Today, we are talking about something that every single person needs to understand if they want long-term results. And that is how to stay on track while eating out, traveling, going to events, having a social life, and actually living your life. Because here's the reality. Your results are not built in a bubble. They're not built only during the perfect weeks where you eat every meal at home, your routine is predictable, your fridge is stocked with all the healthy good things, and nothing comes up. Your results are built in real life. A real life includes dinners out and birthdays, having vacations or camping trips, weekends away, restaurants sometimes or road trips, having a wedding or a holiday or a social event, and busy weeks and moments where you just don't have full control over the food around you. And if your plan only works when life is perfectly structured, then it's not a sustainable plan. It's just a controlled environment. And that's a big difference. I think this is where so many people get stuck. They're either fully on track or completely off. They're either tracking perfectly or not tracking at all. They're either eating at home and following the plan, or they're out at dinner and suddenly the whole day is a write-off. And honestly, that all or nothing approach is one of the biggest reasons people struggle to maintain results. Not because they don't care or because they're not trying, but because they haven't learned how to be consistent in the middle. And the middle is where real life happens. So today, I want to walk you through what it actually means to stay on track while still living your life. Not in a rigid way and not bring your chicken and broccoli to the restaurant way, but in a way that helps you stay connected to your goals without feeling like your life has to revolve around them. Because that's the sweet spot. You need structure, you need intention, you need awareness, but you also need flexibility. And learning how to balance those things is a skill. The first thing I want to say today is this. Staying on track does not mean being perfect. I think a lot of people hear stay on track and immediately they assume that it means that you're never eating out, or you're never going to have the dessert, or you're never going to have a drink or enjoy a vacation, that you always have to choose the lowest calorie option, and that you're tracking completely perfect, or that you're being completely in control. And that's not what I mean. That's not realistic. And for most people, that's not even healthy long term. Staying on track means your choices are still connected to the direction you want to go. That's it. It means you're not abandoning yourself just because life looks different for a few days. It means you still have some level of awareness, some level of intention, and some level of self-trust. And I think the word track can sometimes feel too rigid as well. So maybe a better way to think about it is, how do I stay aligned? How do I stay connected? How do I enjoy this experience without completely disconnecting from the person that I'm trying to become? Because that's really what we're talking about. Let's use eating out as the first example. A lot of people struggle with restaurants because they walk in with no plan. And then they make decisions based entirely on how hungry they are, or their cravings that day, and their emotions, or sometimes what everyone else is doing, and maybe what looks good in the moment. And that's not wrong, but if you're constantly eating out reactively, and your goal is fat loss or body composition change, it can become a problem. Because restaurant meals are usually higher in calories and fats and portion sizes, right? And they have more sauces or oils or just extras, right? And that doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that you need more awareness around it. And this is where I want people to stop moralizing food. Okay? A burger isn't bad. Fries aren't bad. Dessert isn't bad. A meal itself out is not bad. But your overall patterns matter. If you eat out once and enjoy yourself, that's one thing. If every meal out turns into having an appetizer and drinks and then a main, or it's always fries and dessert and there's just no awareness, and then you feel guilt after, and that happens multiple times per week, then yes, that will impact your results. Not because you're bad, but because math is math. Your habits are your habits, and the patterns are what they are. And this is where we need to be adults about our goals. You don't need shame, but you need honesty. If you want a certain result, your choices have to support that result more often than they work against it. That doesn't mean every choice has to be perfect, but it does mean you can't constantly act surprised when your body reflects your actual patterns. So when you're eating out, one of the first things I coach my clients to do is look ahead. If you know where you're going, check the menu. Not because you need to obsess about things, and not because you need to pick the lowest calorie thing, but because walking into a restaurant already starving and overwhelmed is not usually when you're going to make the most aligned decision. Looking ahead at that menu will help give you some clarity. You can ask, okay, what do I actually want? What would feel good to eat? What option supports my goals? Or is this a meal where I actually want to choose to be a little bit more flexible? Or is this just like a regular restaurant meal where I can actually make a little bit more of that aligned choice? And that last question can be huge because not every meal out actually needs to be for a special occasion. Sometimes it's just a Tuesday and you didn't feel like cooking. And if every meal out becomes a treat yourself moment, it's going to be very hard to make progress. That's the one biggest shift I want people to make. Learn the difference between special and normal. If it's your anniversary or a birthday, a vacation dinner out, or an experience you genuinely care about, okay, maybe you loosen the reins a little. But if it's just a random lunch out or takeout because you didn't have a plan, or a meal that you won't even remember tomorrow, that might not need the same level of flexibility. That's where maturity comes into this. Not every opportunity to indulge needs to be taken. And I know that can sound direct, but it's true. Now, when you're eating out and you do want to stay more aligned, here's some things that can actually help you. Start with protein. This is one of the simplest anchors. Look at the menu and ask, where is the protein in this meal? Is there chicken, fish, steak, eggs, tofu maybe, shrimp, turkey, beef, whatever it is? Protein is going to help you with your fullness. It's going to help you with your muscle retention, your recovery, your blood sugar stability, and overall nutrition quality. So if you're eating out and your plate is mostly carbs and fats with barely any protein, you'll probably feel less satisfied and it's going to be easier to overshoot your calories. Again, not bad, just something to be aware of. Then look at your sides. This is where you can make some simple swaps without making the meal feel, sad. Maybe you still get the burger, okay? But you swap the fries for a salad. Or maybe you keep the fries, but you skip the appetizer. Or maybe you get the wrap, but you choose grilled chicken instead. Maybe you get the pasta, but you make sure that you add chicken or shrimp or, some type of protein. You don't always need to choose the perfect option. You just need to make the meal a little more aligned. And that's a skill. I also want to talk about portions because portion sizes at restaurants can be massive. And a lot of people eat what's in front of them simply because it's there. But you're allowed to stop when you're satisfied. You're allowed to take home leftovers. You're allowed to eat slowly enough to notice your fullness. And I know that sounds basic, but for a lot of people, it's not. Especially if you grew up in a household where the message was, finish your plate. Or if you have that, I paid for it, so I should eat it mindset. But your body is not a garbage can. You do not need to finish food just because it's there. So let's talk about tracking while you eat out, because this is where people get overwhelmed. Do you need to track perfectly? No. Can tracking still be helpful? Absolutely. If you're in a fat loss phase and you're eating out, I generally think it's useful to track as best as you can. Not perfectly, but honestly, and search for a similar meal, or, overestimate slightly if you need to, and track those big pieces, your protein, your carbs, your fats. Did you have alcohol? Was there a dessert? Any sauces that were obvious? The goal here isn't perfection, but it's awareness. Because if you skip tracking every meal that's inconvenient to you, then the meals that are most likely to impact your progress are the ones you have the least awareness around. And that matters. And here's a hard truth for you. If you're saying you want fat loss, but every time life gets less convenient, you stop tracking, you stop paying attention, you stop planning, and you stop making aligned choices, then you're not really practicing fat loss in real life. You're practicing fat loss only when it's easy. And that's not enough for long-term results. Again, not perfection, but engagement. That's the word I come back to all the time. Stay engaged. Now, let's talk about travel. Travel is where people really struggle because your routine changes completely. You might not have your usual kitchen, your schedule is different, sleep is likely off, meals are less predictable, and you're going to be eating out more, and you might be in a car or an airport. And a lot of people can interpret that as, well, I can't stay on track. But that's not true. You may not be able to follow your normal routine, but you can still stay connected. And that's the key. So before you travel, ask yourself, what is the goal of this trip? That matters because not every trip should be treated the same. If you're going on a once-in-a-lifetime vacation, your approach might look a little different than if you're traveling for work. If you're going camping for a weekend, then that's different than spending 2 weeks all-inclusive. Or if you're visiting family, then that's different than a fitness retreat. You need context. This is one of the things that I think people miss. They want one rule for everything. But real coaching is contextual. Sometimes the goal is fat loss. Sometimes the goal is maintenance. Sometimes the goal is not gaining excessive weight, or the goal is simply not abandoning your every habit. Sometimes the goal is fully enjoying the experience and getting back into a rhythm after. The problem is most people don't decide ahead of time, so then they drift. And drifting usually leads to choices that don't feel intentional. So before a trip, I would ask, am I trying to continue making progress during this trip? Am I trying to just maintain? Or am I choosing to be more flexible here? What are the habits that I want to keep? What are the habits that I'm okay of letting go of temporarily? What would make me feel good when I come home? That last one is important because a lot of people only think about what they want in the moment. They don't think about how they want to feel after. And I'm not talking about the guilt, I'm talking about self-respect. Do you want to come home feeling rested, happy, satisfied, proud of yourself, like you enjoyed yourself but didn't completely abandon yourself? Or do you want to come home feeling bloated, sluggish, frustrated with yourself, regretful of some decisions, or disconnected from who you were before the trip. Like now you need to just get back on track. That's worth thinking about. When you're traveling, I like to use some anchors. Anchors, if you haven't heard me talk about them before, they are small habits that keep you connected. That's it. They don't need to be complicated. Some simple things are protein at breakfast, a daily walk, which usually is super simple to get in when you're traveling. There's usually lots of walking. Water every day. Vegetables once or twice per day. If you have the opportunity to, and you want to stay with this habit, a short workout. Maybe it's just, stopping your meals when you're satisfied, or one intentional meal per day, and not snacking mindlessly all day. That's it. A few anchors can completely change the way you feel during your travel. Not because you're being strict, but because you're staying connected to yourself and your goals. So now let's talk about airports and road trips, because those are common. A lot of people let travel days become chaos. They skip their meals, they get overly hungry, and then they just tend to grab whatever is available. And then they arrive at their destination exhausted and already feeling off. One of the best things you can do is plan your food before you're desperate. Bring protein options, bring snacks, have some water, eat before you leave if you need to. Look for decent options at the airport. Not perfect options. Some decent things that you can have are a protein bar, a Greek yogurt. Sometimes you can get egg wraps or a wrap with protein like grilled chicken, or maybe there's even a grilled chicken salad. If you're in the car, things like beef jerky as well and stuff. Sometimes you have fruits or nuts, and maybe you pack a sandwich. Again, it's not perfect, but it's better than waiting until you're absolutely starved and then grabbing the first thing that you see. And this is where I want to be very clear. Planning ahead is not obsessive. Planning ahead is being an adult. If you know you get hungry, if you know travel days are chaotic, if you know you make worse choices when you're starving, then having a plan is not restrictive. It's actually supportive. So now let's talk about vacations, because this is where people often swing between extremes. One extreme is, I'm on vacation, so nothing counts. The other extreme is, I need to track everything perfectly and control every meal. And honestly, neither is ideal for most people. The sweet spot is intentional flexibility. That means you decide what matters most. Maybe you really want that local dessert that's there. Have it. Maybe you're excited about a nice dinner out. Go and enjoy it. Maybe you don't care about the random hotel breakfast pastry. Then just don't eat it because it's there. That's the difference. Intentional flexibility means you're choosing what's worth it, not just saying yes to everything because you can. I think a lot of people confuse the freedom with impulsiveness. Food freedom doesn't mean eating everything all the time with no awareness. Food freedom means you can make a choice without guilt, but also without losing control. It means you can enjoy food and still respect your goals. That's a skill. When you're on vacation, I often coach clients to think in terms of worth it choices. What is actually worth it to you? Not what is just available. Not what everybody else is having or what you feel pressured to eat. But what do you actually want? Because a lot of people consume extra calories from things that they don't even care about. That stale muffin at the breakfast counter, the random bag of chips, the extra drink that somebody else is having, so you have one too, the appetizer that they didn't really want, the dessert that was just meh. And then they feel frustrated because they didn't feel like they overdid it. But all those things, those little things, those extras, they add up. So if you ask yourself, is this worth it? If yes, go ahead, enjoy it. If no, then skip it. That's not restriction, that's being intentional. Now, let's talk about alcohol because it matters. You don't need to drink. You can drink. But you need to understand that alcohol can affect your calories, yes. But it affects so much more. And some really big important ones. Things like your sleep, your recovery, your hunger leads to certain cravings. It changes your decision-making skills, messes with your hydration, and your next day energy. So if you're having multiple drinks, then eating more, you're sleeping poorly, you're skipping movement the next day, and you're feeling off, it's not just the calories that came from the alcohol. It's the whole ripple effect. And that doesn't mean you can never drink. It just means that you need awareness around it. So maybe you choose fewer drinks or you alternate with water. Maybe you decide which nights are actually worth having that drink or two. Maybe you don't drink every single day of your vacation. Again, intention, not perfection. So now, when should you let go a little? Because that matters too. There are absolutely times in our life where loosening up is appropriate. If you're celebrating something meaningful on a special trip, at a once-a-year event, or sharing a meal that genuinely matters to you, I don't want you sitting there obsessing over your calories. That's not the goal. Your life matters too. Your relationships matter, your experiences matter, and food can be part of those memories and culture and your connection. And I don't want fitness to take that away from you. But there's a difference between letting go a little and abandoning yourself completely. So letting go a little might look like just not tracking your dinner and enjoying your dessert, having a drink, choosing the meal that you really want, and being more flexible for a day. Abandoning yourself, however, typically looks like turning one flexible meal into an entire weekend spiral. Ignoring your hunger and your fullness cues, eating things that you don't often enjoy, stopping all your movement, or mentally checking out and just telling yourself that you're going to restart later. Those are not the same thing. This is where I think people need a lot more self-honesty. Because sometimes people say, I just want balance. But what they're actually practicing is avoidance. Balance does not mean doing whatever you want all the time. Balance means being able to hold both your goals and your life at the same time. Now, when do you need to stay more on track? That's another important piece. If you have a specific goal like fat loss and you're in a focused phase, then yes, there will be times where you need more structure. That doesn't mean you can't eat out. It means that you need to be more intentional when you do. If you're eating out multiple times a week, traveling often, or having frequent social events, you may not be able to treat every single one like a free-for-all and still expect fat loss. That's just the truth. You can't have every weekend be balance if balance always means overeating. At some point, the pattern of it all matters. If you're in a fat loss phase, staying on track might look like checking your menus ahead, tracking as best as possible, prioritizing the protein, choosing lower calorie options sometimes, keeping alcohol moderate or not at all, building your day around the event, making sure you get some type of movement in, and choosing which indulgences actually matter. Not because you're being boring, because you're in a focused phase. And focused phases require focused behavior. This is where people often get frustrated. They want the results of a focused phase with the behaviors of a maintenance phase. And that doesn't work. If you want fat loss, there is some level of trade-off. Not misery, not obsession, but trade-off. You may not get to have everything all the time in the amounts you want while also expecting your body to change. That's not punishment, that's just simply reality. Now, if you're in maintenance, things can look a little different. Maintenance gives you more flexibility. You're not trying to create a deficit. You're trying to maintain your results while living your life. That might mean more restaurant meals, more flexibility with things, less tracking, and a wider range of choices. But even maintenance still requires awareness, because maintenance is not do whatever forever. Maintenance is living in a way that supports the body and habits that you've already built. And this is why knowing your season matters. Are you in a fat loss phase? A maintenance phase? Are you in a muscle building phase? Are you in a stressful life season? Are you on vacation? Your approach should match your season. A lot of people struggle because they don't define the season. So they expect fat loss while living like they're in maintenance. Or they're trying to diet during a season where they barely have the capacity to cook, sleep, or train. That mismatch creates frustration. Now let's talk about weekends, because weekends are basically mini travel for a lot of people, especially during summertime. You have a different schedule, there's usually less structure, more social events, and more eating out. And this is where a lot of progress gets stalled. Not because weekends are bad, but because people act like weekends don't count, and they do. Your body doesn't know it's Saturday or Sunday. Your metabolism doesn't pause because you're at brunch with the ladies. Again, not to create guilt, just awareness. If Monday to Thursday is aligned, but your Friday night to your Sunday is chaotic, that absolutely is going to impact your weekly average. And that's especially true with fat loss. A calorie deficit is not built from 4 good days if the other 3 erase it. And I know that sounds direct, but sometimes we need direct. Because a lot of people keep saying, I don't understand why I'm not losing weight. And then their weekends are completely unstructured. There's your answer. The solution is not to make your weekends miserable. The solution is to create weekend anchors. So maybe that looks like keeping your protein at breakfast or keeping your breakfast exactly the same as the rest of the week. Maybe it's 1 planned meal out instead of 3 meals, or a walk each day, or keeping some type of structure with your workouts. Maybe it's water before alcohol, or choosing not to have any alcohol, or 1 drink instead. Maybe it's choosing 1 treat instead of all of them that are offered to you or at your fingertips. Trying to keep some type of meal structure, or even not skipping meals all day before your dinner, and that's a big one. Small things, but repeat them. One of my favorite questions for weekends, travel, or eating out that I've had is, what would make you feel proud after? Not perfect, but proud of yourself. That question can be powerful to somebody because it makes you think beyond that moment. It helps you choose in a way that considers both your present enjoyment, but also the future self that you respect. Now let's talk about guilt, because guilt ruins this whole process for a whole lot of people. They eat something off plan, then they feel guilty, and then they spiral. But guilt doesn't create better choices. Guilt usually just creates more of that all or nothing thinking. And you don't need guilt. You need feedback. If you ate out and you overdid it, ask yourself, was I too hungry going into this meal? Did I skip meals earlier in the day? Did I eat things that I didn't even enjoy? Did the alcohol I consumed impact my decisions I made? Was I stressed? Did I go in without a plan? That's useful information. I'm terrible. Telling yourself I'm terrible is not useful. And remember, 1 meal is not the problem. The pattern after the meal is usually the problem. If you have a higher calorie meal and then you just return to your normal habits, you're fine. If you have a higher calorie meal and then say, screw it for 3 days, that's where the issue starts. So the skill is not avoiding all higher calorie meals. The skill is returning quickly to your habits. That is one of the biggest skills in long-term success. This is also why I don't love the phrase falling off track, because it makes it sound like you're either on a path or off the path. But really, you're always making choices. Some choices move you closer to your goal. Some keep you about the same and steady. And then some move you further away. The goal is not perfection with it. The goal is making more choices that support the direction that you want to go. Now, I want to talk about what to do after traveling or after a social weekend, okay? Because it does matter. We've touched a little bit on it, but I think we can go a little deeper. Do not punish yourself. Don't slash your calories. Don't start doing extra cardio to make up for it. And honestly, don't weigh yourself the next morning. After eating out or traveling, your weight will likely be up because of extra sodium, carbs, water retention, your digestion, alcohol. Having poor sleep is going to affect it. Inflammation from traveling on a plane. That is normal. It does not mean you gain 5 pounds of fat. So what do? You return to your normal. Your water, your protein, your walks, regular meals, consistent sleep schedule again, your usual workouts. That's it. The faster you return to normal without any drama, the better. One of the biggest signs of a healthy relationship with the process is being able to enjoy life without needing to compensate afterwards. You don't need to earn your food. You don't need to punish yourself for food. You need to learn how to include food experiences within an overall aligned lifestyle. That's the goal. Now, I want to make this really practical. If you are eating out tonight and you want to stay aligned, here's what I would do. Look at the menu ahead of time. Decide what you actually want. Anchor the meal with protein. Choose where you want to be flexible. Maybe that's a drink. Maybe that's dessert. Maybe that's having the side of fries. But maybe not all of them. Eat normally earlier in the day. Don't starve yourself. Drink your water. Eat slowly and stop when you're satisfied. Enjoy it. And then move on. That's it. If you're traveling for the weekend, pack your protein options. Bring snacks. Plan 1 or 2 simple meals if it's possible, and get some movement in. Keep your hydration decent. Decide ahead of time where you're willing to be flexible. And don't treat every single meal like the Last Supper. Come home and then return to normal. If you're going on a full vacation, pick your anchors. Maybe it's breakfast protein, daily movement, hydration, mindful portions. Choose your worth it meals and enjoy them fully. Don't waste your energy on guilt. Don't make every single food decision a free-for-all either. Return to your routine after you get back. And if you're in a focused fat loss phase, you do need more intention. Then that's not a bad thing. That's just the phase that you're in. You can still enjoy life, but you may need to make more strategic choices. Because again, fat loss requires a deficit, and a deficit requires consistency. Not perfection, but consistency. I think the biggest thing I want you to take from this episode is that staying on track while living your life is not about being rigid. It's about being skilled. It's a skill to eat out without spiraling. It's a skill to travel without abandoning yourself. It's a skill to enjoy your food without having guilt. It's a skill to choose flexibility intentionally. It's a skill to come back to your normal more quickly. And like any skill, it takes practice. You're not going to get this perfect right away, and that's okay. But you do need to stop using real life as a reason to completely disconnect from your goals. Because real life, it's not going away. There will always be restaurants. There will always be weekends, and there will always be travel, and there's always going to be social events. So instead of waiting for a perfect season, learn how to build consistency inside the life you actually have. That is what creates long-term results. And honestly, that's what I help clients do all the time. Not just follow a plan when everything is easy, but learn how to make decisions in the messy middle. Because that's where life happens. That's where the results are built. And that's where you become someone who can actually maintain them. If this episode resonated with you, come hang out with me on Instagram at DL Fitness Coaching. Send me a message and let me know what stood out to you. And if you're ready for support applying this in your own routine, you can find all the details about my coaching in the show notes. Thanks for being here, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.